Hi, and welcome back to another episode on how to hack. So over here, we have Open Web Application Security Project, Juice Shop running. So once we're on this vulnerable web application server, we can do all of our testing against the server. So on the top right corner, we have account, and we can do a login directly to any account. So one thing that we want to introduce and learn today is about web developer option. So we can click onto the top right corner. We can click on the web developer and we can click on toggle tools. So once we're in toggle tools, we'll be able to see all the different tools that we have. So we have inspector, which can help us inspect elements of a website to understand more about the site. We have console, which tells us about the items and activities that are happening onto the web developer. And we have debugger, all right, so to debug more information. So we can look at the JavaScript information that are being loaded. So we also did a minify item, so we actually try to deminify the JavaScript so that it becomes human readable, and we can try to segment out which are the pages, so we learn about how to access some of these items within the JavaScript. And the really important part is on network. So network actually help us understand what kind of application programming interfaces could have been called and what kind of data that are being transacted between the web application server and your web browser. So of course we did a earlier tutorial about SQL injection. So over here we can see there is an email field, so we can go ahead and actually enter a single quote or 1 = 1, and we can just enter whatever password we want. And of course we can click on login, and we will log in successfully as an admin account. Okay, so this is the first row that is actually being queried by the database when we try to do a login, which is why we ended up with this particular account the moment we try to log in. So once we're in, we can see, for example, we have a who am I, so we have the response, and we have all this different data. Okay, so we managed to get some token. We get the UMail as well. All right, so we can see all this data and information that are being sent to us, and we even get the IP address that is also being sent over. Okay, so we get all this different data, all this different information. All right, so we can see the method, whether it's a get or whether it is a post of information. All right, so all these are very important points to understand about what's happening. So the next thing that we want to look at is in terms of understanding about the account details. So for example, over here, if I click under account and I click under orders and payment, and if I click on save address, for example, I can again go into web developer. All right, and we can click on network. And again, we can try to reload the site. Okay, so we can actually do a refresh, and we can see the kind of information that are being funneled to us from the web application server. All right, so we can click on address and we can see some information. All right, so we can click on, for example, response. So we have the mobile number over here, which is actually not being shown. All right, we can get the mobile number. We can get the zip code that is also being shown here. We have test and so on and so forth. All right, so very quickly, we can find out all these different items. So we found the hidden mobile number that's actually not here at all. Okay. So the next thing we can try to do is also click under account, click under orders and payment, and we can click under the payment options. So if you click on payment options, what you can see here is we have all this asterisk that actually mask out the first 12 characters of a credit card. So in our case, we are only seeing the last 4 digits of the credit card. This is again for security purposes and for all these different details, so we can see the name, and we can see all this different data. So what we can do, because as a result of looking at the network traffic that's being sent in and out between the web browser as well as the web application server, we can also try to find out what are the exact credit card details. And if I click over here on the cards, immediately, if I zoom in a little more, we can see the actual card numbers, and we see the ending as 4368. So this coincides with the safeguards that we have over here. So immediately we can find out those details and data. All right. And likewise for the second credit card, we are also able to find out the full credit card details. And why is that the case? The reason is because a lot of times the web application server, all right, so whether it is a off-the-shelf web application server, or whether it is a custom built from ground up, from ground zero, whatever the case is, sometimes the developers may have coded the credit card details or some data or information that is being sent from the web application server into the web browser. And what they do is that they only change the value later on using JavaScript, which means that we actually get the full data into our browser, and our browser will manipulate the display into asterisks. And that is why we're able to see it through the use of Network tab under Web Developer. So once again, I hope you've learned something valuable in today's tutorial. And if you like what you've watched, remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so that you can be kept abreast of the latest cybersecurity tutorial. Thank you so much once again for watching. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode on how to hack. Alright, so now we'll be discussing on bypass front-end restrictions. Okay, so here we are back to WebGoat once again, which is our web application penetration testing platform for us to learn all about web application security. So in this case, on the left side, we have client side, and you can go ahead and click under bypass front-end restrictions. So once again, right, users have great control of how they can manipulate the data, the input that can then be sent over into the web application server. So they can actually amend and change the way, the structure of the values that are sent into the web application system. All right, so as long as you have a basic understanding of HTML, you're able to amend and edit the HTML through Web Developer, or even downloading the entire HTML page and then editing the values, and then you can actually send it over all the way to the web application system. So over here, all right, we can temper and change the data and the values. So in this case over here, we have field restrictions. So sometimes some of these web developers, especially on the front end, they may create certain options for you to select from. For example, here we have a number of views. So the first view, we have, for example, option 1, which is a drop-down list. And then we have radio button, we have checkbox, and we have an input field. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we got 4 options for us to input and submit into the web application system. So if I go ahead and click on submit, of course it says, sorry, the solution is not correct. Please try again. All right, so what we can do right here is to go ahead and do right click, okay, and we can click on inspect element. All right, as you can see over here, inspect element. So here we can see we have the form class. All right, so this is submitted into the web application system. So you can see the action /webgoat/ bypass restrictions / field restrictions. Okay, so we can look at the first one, which is a select. All right, so we have a select, and we have a number of options right here. So all you got to do is do a right click and click on edit as HTML. So what we can do is we can copy the information over here. Okay, and we can paste it, and we can change the value. Okay, so I'm going to change this to option 3. All right, and this will give us immediately an additional option for us to select from. So if you see over here, option 1, 2, and 3. So now we have 3 options that we can submit into the web application server by tampering with the data on the browser. Likewise, on the radio button, we have 2 possible values. So once again, we can change this. All right, so we can see over here, we have input type radio, name radio, value is option 1, and of course here we can see, all right, we have checked. Okay, and now we have input type radio, name radio, value equal option 2. So once again, we can do a right click, and then we can click and edit as HTML. So I can copy all this information right here. Okay, then I can put it after the break. All right, so we can click on edit as HTML, and I can hit enter on that, paste the information over here, and I can change these to option number 3. Okay, so once again, I can hit enter on it, and we can see one additional option right here. Okay, so we can see that we got one additional item that we can click on. All right, so we can select all this as option 3. Next, we have the checkbox. So again, we can see here we have the input type, which is a checkbox, and of course the name is checkbox, and we have the parameter checked. So once again, you can click on edit as HTML, all right, space, value, all right, and then we can put whatever value you want. So in this case, I can put, for example, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so once again, we are changing the values that are being inserted into the web application system. And finally, on the text input box, all right, so here we have max length is equal to 5. So again, you can edit as HTML. So the restriction lies on the max length. So we can change this to 6. All right, then I can add an additional value for this. Okay, so right now, before I click submit, all right, so some real life scenarios. Why do we need to do this? It's because as we are sending different kind of payloads into the web application system for penetration testing, whether it's cross-site scripting, server-side request forgery, SQL injection, there could be certain limitations at the browser level that we are unable to push the payload into the web application system. So with this in mind, all right, by changing and editing and tampering with the data, we'll be able to submit it successfully into the web application server, which can then get processed for us to run certain kind of hacking techniques and tactics against the system. So now we can go ahead and click on to submit. All right, and it says, congratulations, you have successfully completed the assignment. All right, so thank you once again for watching, and I hope you have learned something valuable. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below, and I'll try my best to answer any of your questions. And remember, like, share, and subscribe to the channel so that you can be kept abreast of the latest cybersecurity tutorial. Thank you so much once again for watching. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode on how to hack. So now we're back to bypass front-end restrictions. And over here, we have validation. So of course, as you can see here, not all the time we will be able to just edit the HTML, edit the value, and submit them into the web application system. And in this case, we could be managed or controlled by JavaScript. All right, so JavaScript is a script that is embedded into the web application system, and that could manage and also control how the client browser interfaces with the website. All right, so in this case over here, we have a task, and the task requests that does not fit the regular expression above the field and all fields. All right, so here we have exactly 3 lowercase characters, so we are sending capital ABC, all right, exactly 3 digits, and we're sending 4 digits, letters, numbers, and space only, so we can put special characters, enumeration of numbers, all right, so only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 is allowed, so we can enter digits here. Simple zip code, all right, up to 5 digits, and we are putting ASD at the end. Zip with optional dashboard, all right, so again, we're adding in additional information, and again, we're adding in ASD one more time. So when you click submit, right, it says JavaScript found form errors. Value entered for field 1 is not correct. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are all not correct. So one more thing that we have learned, right, as part of understanding about web application penetration testing is that if you go on the web developer and you click onto network, okay, and if I click on submit and I click OK, all right, as you can see over here, right, what happens is that before we are able to submit it into the system, all right, the information is already being picked up by the JavaScript. So if I click on the post over here, all right, we can see the information. We have the response headers, we have the request headers, and we can look at the params. All right, so these are the parameters that's been sent over. And then we have this additional field called error 7. Error 7. Okay, so this was also sent into the web application system. And of course, we got a response. So it says lesson completed is false. Sorry, the solution is not correct. Okay, and so on. All right, so all this has been flagged out. All right, so we are able to see all these details. So the JavaScript is the first line of defense for a lot of these web application systems. And all we got to do is to make sure that we have Burp Suite running. So to help us get rid of the JavaScript from being loaded inside the client browser. So all we got to do right now is go under Preferences, scroll down all the way to the bottom. All right, click under Settings. And over here, you can click onto Manual Proxy Configuration. So we have HTTP proxy 127.0.0.1 and port 8888. Go ahead and click the OK on that. And now we have already launched our Burp Suite, so we can turn on the intercept. Okay, so go ahead and click under Proxy tab, Intercept, and click under Intercept is on. So I go back into Firefox. All right, so I can go back here into Firefox and click Submit. Okay, so Burp Suite will pick this up. All right, so I can drop the lesson overview. All right, I can drop the lesson manual. All right, and over here we have the post. So we have WebGoat, bypass restrictions, front end validation. All right, so we have all these different details once again. And we can do a right click. Okay, send to, all right, repeater. So send to repeater, and you can see that the repeater tab is now in orange. So go ahead and click on it. And this is the place where we can amend the kind of values that we want to send straight, all right, into the web application system. All right, so in this case, we can see that we have the field, all right, that has already been pre-filled during our data or our payload that we have amended. And of course, at the end, we have this error, all right? It says error equals 7. So as you make less error, it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So in this case, we're going to change the error into 0. Okay, so we change the error to 0, and we go ahead and click on send. So once you click on send, immediately we're able to put all this data, post all this data into the web application server, and it says lesson completed. Congratulations, you have successfully completed the assignment. All right, so once again, I hope you learned something valuable in today's tutorial. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below, and I'll try my best to answer any of your queries. Okay, and remember, like, share, and subscribe to the channel so that you can be kept abreast of the latest cybersecurity tutorial. Thank you so much once again for watching. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode on how to hack. So here we're back to WebGoat as part of a web application penetration testing series. And on the right side, we have client-side attacks, and you can go ahead and click onto HTML tampering. So here we are on the lesson, and the concept is that browsers generally allow us to edit, change information as we submit them, all right, into the web application system for processing, either inputting into the database, updating the database, or even removing from the database, just like your shopping cart, just like all this different data that you may be inputting into an e-commerce site, a social media platform, your bank account. So moving on to lesson number 2. All right, so over here it says, try yourself. In an online store, you ordered a new TV. Try to buy one or more TVs for a lower price. Okay, so over here we have the quantity and we have the price. And of course, we have a remove button. And of course, it help us add in the subtotal, and over here we can see all this different information. So you can go ahead and click on checkout, and of course you get the following response: this is too expensive, you need to buy at a cheaper cost. So what we need to do is we need to be able to amend information that is being submitted from the browser into the web application system. All right, so what we can do is to make use of web developer to help us launch the attack. So going to the right side, okay, we can go ahead and click under Manual, and you can click under Web Developer, and you can click onto Network, or you can use the shortcut Control-Shift-E. So go ahead and click on it, and over here, all right, we can see the lesson, manual.mvc, and so on, so we can easily clear all of them, all right? And you can go ahead and click on Checkout. So once you do so, we will have a following task, which is a post method and a status 200. So you can go ahead and click on it, and we have the parameters. So here we can see the quantity, the total number, and of course we have the response. And the response is feedback. This is too expensive. You need to buy at a cheaper cost. All right, so what we can do is do a right click, okay, on the left side, and click under Edit and Resend. Go ahead and click on it. And what we can do here is we can look at the request headers and all this different information. And then we have the request body. So in this case, we have QTY, which stands for quantity and total. So all you got to do is change and amend any of the values under total. So in this case, we're going to use 29.99. All right, so once you're done with this, you can go ahead, all right, and click send. All right, so once you're done with it, you can click onto the new task. All right, you can double click on it, and it says over here, feedback, well done. You just bought a TV at a discount. All right, so immediately we'll be able to alter the way that we're sending data to and fro between the browser as well as the web application system. All right, so once again, I hope you've learned something valuable in today's tutorial. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below, and I'll try my best to answer any of your queries. Remember, like, share, and subscribe to the channel so that you can be kept abreast of the latest cybersecurity tutorial. Thank you so much once again for watching. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode on how to hack. So over here, we have already installed webcode and we have webcode running. So we're going to go into A1, which is under injection on the left side, as you can see. So as mentioned earlier, webcode is a vulnerable web application system that we can penetrate into. And at the same time, they have structured the entire curriculum to make it very, very easy for us to learn about cybersecurity, especially in the area of web application penetration testing. Okay, so we are going to go into SQL injection intro. All right, so over here, we're going to learn about structured query language and how it is being utilized by websites, web application systems, as well as mobile application systems to actually allow users and the systems to store records. And when I say records, it could be user database, credit card information, shopping cart, and many other database systems that they could actually use to manage and power recording all this different data. So of course, they are going to go through about SQL query, SQL injection, and how SQL fundamentals work. So I think this is a really important step in terms about learning how SQL injection come about. So first thing first, on number item 2, what is SQL? All right, SQL stands for Structured Query Language. So it is a query language that helps us be able to pull record, update table information, delete table, drop tables, and all this manipulation inside a database system. All right, and a database system can be from Microsoft SQL, it can be from PostgreSQL, it can be many of these different kind of database systems. So here we have a table. So a table is a 2D row and column, all right, that allow us the ability to store data almost like an Excel sheet format. And over here we have the columns. All right, so the columns, as you can see, are identified by the column names. So we have user ID, first name, last name, department, salary, of 10. All right, so this can be, for example, a password field that is used to authenticate users into the system. And a user ID is a unique value. It's a unique value to uniquely identify and distinguish across the different roles. So all these roles represent data for one specific perhaps user as part of record keeping. And of course, as we scroll all the way down, we can look at how we can instruct the system to do SQL query. So in our case, all right, look at the example table, trying to retrieve the department of the employee Bob Franco. Okay, so what we can do here is we can try to retrieve those data, and we can see that Bob Franco has a user ID of the following. So what we will do now is to use, of course, you can go to sqlcost.com. So we can use select, asterisk stands for all, from, all right, employees, where user ID equal, and then we can paste the user ID data over here. So we can paste the user ID data and then click submit. So once you click submit, it will immediately pull out those records that complies to this specific filter where the user ID is 96134, and it will pull out this specific row of all these different details. So in this case, we can see the salary, the off 10, the department, the last name, the first name, and the user ID. So all those information inside the table with all of those columns in relation to the row will be pulled out. Okay, so this is the basic of how SQL query is being run. So every time you're logging into a website, you're logging into a site and so on, what it does is that it will actually pull those records, do a check on the record, and then after that allow you access into the site depending on whether you pass or fail to log in. And we have DML. DML stands for Data Manipulation Language. Okay, so it allows us to select, insert, update, delete tables information. All right, and of course, attacker, if they know how to utilize data manipulation language, they can change the information of a particular table record or many rows in a table. Okay, so these are the different, all right, data manipulation language commands: storing, retrieving, modifying, and deleting data. Okay, so over here we have an example, right, where we are receiving and retrieving data. Okay, and now what we will do is to change information of a particular row using data manipulation language. So what we can do is use update. All right, so update will be the instruction that we will send. So we can enter update. Okay, and another good thing is that I'll be pasting into the comment section over here. So I've actually created and all the payloads that we will use as part of learning about how to run all these attacks. So this is for item number 2. Update employee set department equals sales. All right. and where user ID is equal. So we're doing a direct filter again. Okay, so all I gotta do is paste the information here, update. All right, this is the table name, set the column name, all right, into sales, and then where the user ID belongs to. And of course, Toby Barnett has a user ID of 89762. So go ahead and click submit on it. So once you click submit on it, it will say you have successfully completed the assignment. All right, and this will immediately show us the information that has been updated to the department of the user. So immediately we can find out those details over here. Okay, so we have updated the table. All right, so moving on into section number 4, okay, or lesson number 4, we have data definition language. All right, so this is about creating the database, especially in the area of defining data structures, database schemas, will let us understand how data should reside in a database. Okay, so this is also important in terms of the database structure. All right, so we have creating a table, all right, altering a table, dropping a table in itself. So whenever we have a table inside a database system, we have to first create a table. And by creating a table, we have different multiple columns. So the columns would have over here first name, last name, user ID, and over here we can see there is a primary key. All right, so one of the columns has to be a primary key to uniquely identify the values inside each of the rows inside the table, okay? And then we have variable and character. Okay, so this is the type of data that we are going to input into a particular column. So over here, we have the SQL query as well. Okay, so what can we do? Now try to modify the scheme by adding the column phone to the table employees. So over here, I'm going to explain to you what the payload looks like. Okay, so we can copy. All right, so what we are doing is we are altering the table because we have first created the table, but now we need to add in a column. All right, so we need to alter the table. All right, and then of course you specify the table name, in this case employees, and then we put an @ okay, we add this particular column as well as a column data type varchar, and then followed by the open bracket 20 and a close bracket followed by semicolon to end the instruction. So go ahead and click submit, and immediately, okay, I can enter over here. Go ahead and click submit, and we'll be able to add the information into the system. All right, so alter table employees at phone cha or character. All right, so as you can see over here, I can reset the database quickly so that we can rectify what could have already been added into the database system. All right, so we have alter table employees at phone varchar 20. So that helped us able to add in this particular column into the table. All right, so with that, we're going to pause here. All right, and then we'll go into section 2 in the subsequent videos. So once again, I hope you have learned something valuable in today's class. And if you like what you've just watched, remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so that you can be kept abreast of the latest cybersecurity tutorial. Thank you so much once again for watching. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode on how to hack. So we'll be continuing from the previous tutorial on WebGoat. So WebGoat is a vulnerable web application system, and we actually stopped at lesson number 4. So we'll move on into lesson number 5 of SQL injection intro. So go ahead and click on number 5. All right, so over here we have what we call data control language. Right, so it is used to create privileges to allow users to access and manipulate different parts of the database. All right, and of course over here we have SQL injection that could help us do, for example, granting of users accesses to different parts of the database, revoking certain privileges of the user using the revoke command. All right, so of course over here we have an example, right? So grant create table to a specific operator. So this allows the operator to create tables inside the database system. And of course here, what we are going to do as an exercise is to grant the user group unauthorized user the right to alter tables. Okay, so there is such an instruction that allows us to do so. So over here, we have what we call grant alter table to unauthorized users. So go ahead and paste that here. So what we do is we are granting, all right, the privilege to alter tables inside the database system, and we are providing this authority to unauthorized user. So go ahead and click submit, and we would have congratulations. All right, congratulations, we have successfully completed the assignment. Okay, so this is granting of the privileges to users to different parts of the database, or to different commands, issuance of commands. So going to lesson number 6. So now we have understood about what are some of the fundamental structured query language instructions. We can now move on to SQL injection. Okay, and this is what we are trying to do here as part of the tutorial, is how can we bypass the Boolean operators, the logic of the database system, and try to gain access, all right, into the database, pull out specific records, pull out the entire table of information, and so on. Okay, and this happens when input are not sanitized, so allowing hackers to bypass the original intention of those applications that are used for input forms, that are used to do searching, authentication. So we have examples of SQL injection over here. So we have the SQL query to retrieve user information from the database. Okay, so this is how, all right, a web application server would call the database to retrieve information. So we have select all from users where name equal. So this, all right, allow them to enter, for example, the username, and then after which the username is inserted from the browser into the web application server and then to the database to retrieve those records. And for example, over here, we have the variable username holds the input from the client, injects it into the query. So we have select from users where name is specifically over here. So for example, all right, so this is really a wonderful instruction and demonstration of how it looks like. Okay, so if we enter, for example, Smith, all right, they actually help us fill in the information here. And we can see select all from users when name is equal to Smith. So immediately we'll be able to pull out information for this particular role. And over here, okay, so what the hackers can do is they can perform further information attack into that input form. So here, for example, we have Smith and we have a single quote. So this ends the instruction here. And what happens is we can enter or, okay, followed by single quote 1 equal single quote 1. Right, so this ends the instruction. Okay, so over here, select all from users when name is equal to Smith or 1 is equal to 1. So what does this mean? All right, so this will return all entries from the users table. Why? Because or 1 equal 1 will always be true. And if it is always true, it means that we'll always get a result back coming in from the system. Okay, so over here, likewise again, okay, we have a second one. All right, Smith, all right, or 1 equal 1 followed by semicolon and double dash. All right, so what this means is that we will actually also help return us all forms of entries from the users table. And the last one over here, the third one, Smith, and then we end the SQL query and we open up a new query, drop table users. Okay, so this would delete away all those user database, all right, all the users table. And finally, we have truncate, all right, audit log, followed by double dash again. And again, the purpose of the double dash is to comment out every other query instructions that come after, all right, the semicolon. All right, so that's the whole idea of double dash. Okay, so this again help us chain multiple SQL commands and deletes the users table as well as entries from the audit log. Okay, so now let us go ahead and move on to lesson number 7. Okay, so consequences of SQL injection. All right. A SQL injection, once it manages to bypass the intended use of the SQL query or our structured query, it can help us shut down the database, pull out records, add users, do all sorts of data manipulation, revoking of user, granting of permissions, and so on. All right, so they can spoof data, tamper of existing data, and all these things that they could literally take control of the database itself. Okay, so we can go to lesson 8 now. And severity, all right, severity of SQL injection. So how can we control it? All right, so it depends on the attacker scale. So a lot of times, if you look at the previous tutorials, we were targeting the Metasploitable as well as the DVWA. We were able to input all the SQL injection, and SQL injection works not just for web application systems. It could also work for mobile applications. Ultimately, mobile applications have to connect to some sort of database system or a application server via application programming interfaces that will then connect to a database system. So either way, we still have to query into database system, pull out records, cross-check records, and they can also be subjected to SQL attacks, okay, SQL injection attacks. And of course, we also have different types of databases. So you have Microsoft Access, MySQL, Oracle databases, Microsoft SQL databases. And what we can do is, of course, depending on the database type, we will also need to amend and adjust our instructions accordingly as we put in the SQL injection into the systems, all right? And it can also be more common in PHP system, classic ASP, Cold Fusion, and some of the older languages where they do not try to sanitize the input or have some form of protection against those type of attacks, okay? All right, so moving on to lesson number 9. All right, so we are going to do a string SQL injection. Okay, so over here, we have the idea of how the SQL queries run, right? So we have select all from user data, where first name is John and last name. Okay, so the user will input the last name. So this is the input box that would come in from the attacker or from the user. All right, so over here, we have select all from user. Okay, so John, and we have Smith. All right, so what we are trying to do is to pull out all those records. So if I click on get account info, okay, it says no results match. So we have to find out in what ways are we able to get those details. All right, so over here I already created and saved those details for us. So we have a Smith followed by a single quote or, okay, 1 equal 1. Okay, so over here, Smith with a single quote. So what this does is that it ends, all right, it ends the structured query language here. And then over here we have or 1 equal 1. So what we got to do is to have single quote for 1 equals single quote 1. All right, so go ahead and click get account info. And once you do so, all right, we'll be able to get the details of all of the query table. Okay, so over here, this is the one. So get account info. You have succeeded. User ID, first name, last name, credit card number, credit card type, cookies, and login count. So all these details are being pulled out immediately once you run the attack, okay? So over here on the left side, we have the user ID. So again, as mentioned earlier in the previous tutorial, behind every web application system, mobile application, you have like a Excel sheet that's running, all right? So it's 2D, row and columns, and we can see all of those details over here, all right? So moving on to lesson number 10, okay? In lesson 10, so we have numeric SQL injection. Okay, numeric SQL injection. In this case, all right, it gives us a warning. So of course, the ultimate goal is to retrieve all the data from the users table, and with warning, only one of these fields is susceptible to SQL injection. You need to find out which to successfully retrieve all the data. All right, so I have login count, so I can enter, for example, 1, and then followed by user ID 1, and click get account info. So we're just testing out what is the normal expected behavior from the web application system as we inject different kind of payloads. All right, so this is important as a start about understanding what's the purpose of the input form, okay? And moving on, all right, so we can see over here, all this is what we call numeric SQL injection. Okay, so what can we do next? So I've already created a payload here. All right, so we have, for example, 1 or, okay, single quote 1, single quote equal, single quote 1, followed by single quote again. All right, so let's copy this details, all right, the payload. And the idea is we're just trying to check, all right, which of this is actually vulnerable. Is it a login count or is it the user ID? So we got two input forms. So we need to test which one of them is susceptible. So go ahead and click get account info. Okay, it says could not pass. And then if I do on the second user ID, click get account info. All right, so we got an error message. So error messages are also very important as part of the response coming in from your payloads. All right, so your payloads get injected and they could show us whether they are vulnerable or not. Okay, so taking count of the error messages is going to be important as part of validating whether the SQL injection will work or not. All right, so now we can go ahead and enter the following and click get account info. All right, so we have identified, of course, user ID is the one that is susceptible to a SQL injection. So which is why we put our payload into the user ID, whereas the login count, we continue to place a proper input into the login count, which is not susceptible to the attack. All right, so over here, immediately, we are able to get the whole table. All right, user ID, first name, last name, credit card number, credit card type, cookie, login count, and all these different data points. Okay, so all this the entire table of information has been retrieved. All right. So with that, we're going to pause here and we will continue with this tutorial in the subsequent video. Okay. So once again, I hope you've learned something valuable. And if you like what you've just watched, remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so that you can be kept abreast of the latest cybersecurity tutorial. Thank you so much once again for watching. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode on how to hack. So now we'll look into the last tutorial on SQL injection intro. Okay, so this is about compromising confidentiality with string SQL injection. Okay, so again, we are on WebGoat, which is a vulnerable web application system that we'll try out all these different kind of attacks on. So we can see on the left side, all these are the different tutorials that we'll be doing as part of our web application penetration testing series. So compromising confidentiality with string SQL injection. All right, so what is string SQL? So this is the payload that goes in to the input form and we are trying to break into the system. All right, so here we have an employee named John Smith. Okay, so they work for a company and we have the current TAN. So TAN is a unique authentication. All right, so here you can think of it kind of like a password or a one-time password that is sent to your mobile devices as you authenticate to the different parts of a banking app, of a system. All right, so over here we can see the query, the structured query language. Select all from employees where last name equal, and then they have an input name, and then followed by authentication underscore TAN. All right, so again, they input the information over here. So for example, if I enter the last name Smith, all right, I can copy and I can paste Smith over here, and then followed by the TAN. So go ahead and paste it. And when we click Get Department, all right, we are able to see, all right, we are getting the username, the first name, the last name, the department, the salary, phone number, and so on. So we can get all these different details, right? So what we're trying to do here is to retrieve all employee data from the employees table. So how can we do so? All right, so over here, okay, once again, going back to the previous tutorial about SQL injection, all right, I already have the payload for us. So all we got to do, right, is to be able to pull out information and records of the system. Okay, so that's what we can do as part of the attack. Okay, so over here, all right, what we will do is to put, for example, or 1 equal 1. Okay, and this will help us immediately get the whole information out of the system. All right, so we'll continue to have the authentication field over here, and all I got to do is to enter the following. Okay, I can copy this part, this segment, and input into our payload. So what we are doing is a single quote or, okay, 1 equal 1 followed by semicolon. So 1 equal 1 is always true. So go ahead and click department. All right, so we can, for example, get rid of the semicolon, okay, or the single quote again. All right, so it says you have succeeded. You successfully compromised the confidentiality of data by viewing internal information that you should not have access to. Well done. Okay, so once again, we're able to pull out the entire table, all the rows of information, and on one of the previous tutorials, one of the lessons, we actually added in an extra column phone, all right, into the database system. So we can see the username, the first name, last name, department, salary, and all these different details again. Okay, so once again, going back to the basics, you have two input forms. So do test them first for susceptibility to SQL injection or to different kind of payloads. So you need different kind of payloads already available. And a lot of these payloads are available out of the box together with Kali Linux that you can just input into the system to test out whether they are sanitizing the input or not. Okay, so that's how we actually run the attack. All right, so we got the employee name, we got the authentication. All right, so and of course you can map it back to the structured query language here, or you can build it on your own. Think about how they are developing the web application system to actually pull out all these different records and how they check for all this different table information. All right, and then after which you can create your payload to inject into the system. All right, so now let us continue, all right, into lesson 12. Okay, so we have compromising integrity with query chaining. Okay, so again, CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Confidentiality meaning that can someone who is unauthorized be able to view confidential data, financial information in which they have no rights to access to? All right, integrity is about changing the data. How are we monitoring changes to the database system or to the file systems? And finally, availability. Is it subjected to denial of service attack? Can we shut down the entire system? All right, so those are the different kind of triads of CIA, which are the fundamentals of cybersecurity. Okay, so SQL query chaining allow us to add additional instructions into the query. All right, so rather than just pulling information out, can we do further different types of structured query language to inject them into the web application system? All right, so once again, we have Smith. All right, I can copy the information here, and I have the TAN, which is authentication TAN. Click Get Department. All right, so we are looking again at the normal way of how it works. And we can see over here, we have the user ID, first name, last name, department, salary, off 10, all right, and phone. Okay, so we can see all these details of employee name, authentication, and so on. So of course, what we are doing, as you have seen from the previous lesson, okay, what we can do is we can inject information into the input forms. All right, so I already have the payload here. So what we can do again is to copy the following. Okay, we can copy the following, and I can paste it, and I'll explain to you what it all means. All right, so first of all, we are closing, okay, the password and or 1 = 1, which is always true, okay? Or you can just close it directly. And then we have the following command. We have update, all right, which is a structured query language. And we have update employees, all right, so we're updating the table employees, right? And we are setting the salary, okay, to a specific number. So we're setting it to 85,000, okay? And then we have where user ID equal, okay, to this specific user ID, which we have over here, right? So once you have all these different details, you can go ahead and click Get Department. Go ahead and click on that. And immediately, we're able to firstly pull out all information of the table. And secondly, we have updated, all right, the system with a new salary number, as you can see over here. All right, so we have updated Smith's salary number. So that's how we are able to violate the integrity segment of the CIA triad. Okay, so let's go back up and go into the final lesson, lesson 1.3, which is compromising availability, meaning can we shut down the database system? Can we drop the table? All right, so that no one has access into the system, okay? So over here, what we are saying is that now that you're the top earner in your company, but do you see that? All right, that seems to be access log table. So access log actually stores all these different changes to the database, and it actually locked down all these things so that it can be used for audit purposes and to look back at what happened to the changes in the database system. So first of all, we have over here drop table access log. So we can copy this, and let me explain to you what this payload means first of all. Okay, so firstly, we're entering a percentage sign. Okay, so this would actually help us complete the query. Okay, and then after that, we are ending the instructions here, and then we have a semicolon, and then followed by a new instruction, which is drop table, and we're dropping this specific table access underscore log. Okay, so this will immediately help us see all those details. And of course, before I even do drop table, I can actually enter, for example, select all from access log to perhaps even view information inside this particular table. Okay, so we can actually go ahead and enter that, and this would help us see some details about the table. So over here, we can see all of the queries that have been sent into the database system. So we have select all from employees. Okay, we have all these different details that have been sent over into the system. And over here, we can see this particular log, right? So we have select all from employees, and then there is a update employees set salary $85,000. Okay, so immediately we're able to see the log file. Okay, so what we'll do next is to actually just copy, all right, a payload and just paste it over here. So what we are doing instead now is drop table. So this would get rid of the entire access log table, and then followed by double dash at the end. So double dash at the end would actually comment out the rest of the query and allowing us to actually run the attack against the system immediately. Okay, so go ahead and enter search logs, and now we can see that we have deleted the access log table, and that way compromise the availability of the data. Alright, so once again, I hope you have learned something valuable in today's tutorial, and remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so that you can be kept abreast of the latest cybersecurity tutorial. Thank you so much once again for watching. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode on How to Hack. So we're back to Hackathon, and we will be looking at this vulnerable web application platform to do our security penetration testing on. And in this case over here, we actually have the website running on Kali Linux, and we can actually log out of the particular session. All right, so we are now on the ecom site, and we can click on the sign in or sign up, and I can go ahead and enter say A and click sign in. And of course, it states the following: username or password are incorrect. So of course over here, what we can do now is to go into your browser, go to top right corner, click under preferences, and scroll all the way down. Say for example you're in Firefox, and you can click under network settings, click under manual proxy configuration. So in this case we have 127.0.0.1 and a port of 8080. Click OK on that, and go ahead and go to top left corner, and we can go ahead and click onto Burp Suite. Okay, so Burp Suite Community Edition would start, and in this case I'm going to click OK, temporary project, click Next, use Burp defaults, click Start Burp. Alright, so once we're here, you can go ahead and click onto the proxy tab. So in the future, we'll be doing a full tutorial for Burp Suite across all the different tabs and functions and capabilities on Burp Suite for us to perform our bug bounty hunting, to do our penetration testing on. Okay, so once we're in, what we can do now is to go back into Firefox and go back to Hackathon. Alright, so we can key in A for username and key in whichever payload you want to. For the password field, click onto sign in. Okay, so once we click on the sign in, it gets sent over into proxy at Burp Suite, and we can see all the details here. So I'm gonna do a Control A, alright, and you can do a right click copy. Alright, so we can copy the entire field. Alright, so once you've done so, you can open up, for example, mouse parent in this case, and I've actually saved all the information here, so I can paste it again, or I can save it one more time. So we have the post. So this is what we are sending over into the web application server from the browser. And in this case, we have user, login, return URL, and then we have the host IP address, the user agent, all this different information that we're sending over into the web application system. So it's very important for us to understand the fundamentals, all right, of how web application actually communicates with the browser or with the agent. All right, in this case we can look at all the different details here, like content type, content length, cookie, upgrade, insecure requests, and so on and so forth. And of course here we have the username and password field. All right, so understanding how this structure works is very important because it helps us identify and also try to manipulate and change different payloads or instructions that we send into the web application system as part of our penetration testing. All right, so what we can do next is we can go ahead and boot up SQL map to help us perform, or SQL map to help us perform the SQL injection attack. All right, so I can go ahead and open up terminal. All right, so I have a separate terminal right here on the right side. Okay, so what I've done is I have actually created, okay, the instructions for us to use. So in this case, I'm going to explain a little more for you as we use the instructions here. Okay, so I can paste the selection. So we have SQL map, all right, and we have -r. So this is the file that we'll be using, which is Hackathon SQL injection -p. So we're targeting the username, all right, level 5 risk 3 DBS threats 10. So go ahead and hit enter on that, and this will begin running the attack. Okay, all right, so just give me a second. Let me take a look at the file where we sent. Okay, so let me cd to desktop. So I've saved the file onto the desktop folder. So now we can rerun the instruction again. Hit enter on that. And over here immediately, right, we can find out more information. All right, it states the following: SQL map resume the following injection. So if you're doing it for the first time, it's going to take a while because it's trying all sorts of attacks. And in this case, we have Boolean based blind. All right, we have stacked queries, and we have time based blind. All right, so if you're not sure what all this stands for in terms of SQL injection, especially in advanced SQL injection, do check out a lecture that I'll post as a link on the comment section. So do check that out if you're not aware about how to run it. Okay, or what all this stands for, all these different type of SQL injection. So over here, immediately we are able to look at the two available databases. So in this case, we have Hackathon and we have Information Schema. So obviously, we're going to be very interested in knowing about Hackathon because that's likely the database which contains all the sensitive information of other users, of the shopping cart information, of the products, of the passwords, the credit card information, the billing address, the phone number, and so on. Information Schema is more of a structure of how the database. All right, so what we can do next is I can go back again, right? So I've created all these different instructions already for you. All right, so I can copy this and let me explain a little more for you as well. So I can paste the selection and it states the following: SQL map-r, all right, and we are specifying the file name again, all right, and of course the username is a target, all right, target parameter that we're going after, and then we have -d, meaning that we are looking into the database Hackathon, and we're looking at the columns or the threads, okay? So threads meaning we're running multiple threads against this attack, all right? So hit enter on that, and right now we are retrieving all those information that is part of the database. So in this case, we can look at all the tables in the database. So again, we have a big coverage about how we run all those SQL injection, about the structure of databases. So in databases, right, you have followed by tables, all right, followed by the information inside the tables, which are structured into columns and rows. All right, in this case, we have all the columns of each of the table. So in this case, we have table news, and we have the column, the type of data that you can input into the column. All right, and we have the, again, table wish list followers. All right, we have the column as well as the type, integer, timestamp. So it's very important for us to understand the basic fundamentals of SQL queries, of how relational databases work with each other, and of course right now not only SQL. All right, so again, we can look at wish list item. All right, we have inquiries, we have products. All right, we have order address, all right, personal data. So you can think back about general data protection regulation, or think about all the privacy laws that has been enacted across many different countries in protecting its citizens' data, because those personal information and data can be used to access some of these sensitive and critical services that you're subscribed to. Okay, so scrolling up, all right, we can see again more tags. And here, all right, we have table users, and table users seem to contain quite a lot of sensitive information, all right? So in this case, we can look at password, we can look at credit card, we can look at email, last login, and all this, even OAuth provider and OAuth UID. So this is open authorization, all right? And we have photo, we cover password, REST token, user, phone, username. So all these are pretty important information that the hackers could extract, and as part of the extraction, they will be able to launch the attacks against the user in question. Okay, so what we can do next is that I've crafted again the second information that can help us dump out more details. So I can copy this and I can go back into terminal. All right, so I can go back into terminal and I can paste the selection. All right, so in this case, right, so once again, we'll look at SQL map, and then we're looking into the file that we have gotten the post into the system. All right, then we have target of username, we have the database Hackathon, and then we have the table TBL users. -C stands for specifying the columns that we're going after. So we have username, password, credit card CVV, credit card expires, dump, all right, and -- threads. Okay, so go ahead and hit enter on that. And over here, we're retrieving all this information, and we can immediately find the username, the password, the credit card, all these different details. And of course, very quickly, we could find out all these details. We can do password cracking on it. We can use all sorts of methods to gain access to the information, personal information, as well as the critical data. So very quickly, we can launch all those attacks. So once again, I hope you learned something valuable in today's session. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below, and I'll try my best to answer any of your questions. And remember, like, share, and subscribe to the channel so that you can be kept abreast of the latest cybersecurity tutorial. Thank you so much once again for watching. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode on How to Hack. So over here, we have Mutility 2 running, and Mutility 2 is a vulnerable web application platform that we can perform our penetration testing on. So wonderful platform for us to learn all about web application penetration testing. And on the left side, we have OWASP, so Open Web Application Security Project, and we have 2017, 2013, 2010, and 2007. So wonderful way for us to learn the history about all these vulnerabilities and how we could possibly exploit them, the evolution of all these security vulnerabilities as well. So if I go under the left side, OWASP 2017, under A1 injection, SQLi, which stands for SQL injection, and we can click onto the first user info SQL. All right, so over here, we need a username and password to view account details. So right now, we don't really have a user account being registered or created. All right, so if I enter some name and password, likely I will not be able to authenticate. So we need some kind of authentication mechanism. So the first thing that we can do is always to enter the following, which is to check, all right, whether the login or input form is susceptible to a single quote here. So go ahead and click on view account details, and immediately we see the following result of feedback coming from the database system. And in this case, it has the MySQL handler.php. All right, and it provides us some error messages. So in this case, we have the following, right? So you have an error in your SQL syntax. Check the manual that corresponds to your MySQL server version for the right syntax to use near, etc. And we have the query, and it even provides us the full query. So if you think back about defense, we have to make sure that whenever there are such error messages, okay, all these error messages are only accessible to internal employees like the IT administrator, the web admin, all right, rather than being displayed outrightly here, where anyone could actually see the results of those inputs. All right, so from the fuzzing technique, they'll be able to pick up all these error messages that could help aid the hackers to perform more precise attack, all right, using very specific payloads. So in this case, we have the query, and it states the following: select all from accounts where username and password equal. So right here, this over here, all right, that I've highlighted is where our payload went in. Okay, so right here, the payload actually went in, and this is the whole structure of the syntax. So what we can do next is to enter the following. All right, so I can do singer, all right, or 1 = 1, and I can copy the following. All right, and I can paste it into password and go ahead and click on the view account details. All right, so what exactly are we trying to do here with the following payload? All right, so the following payload, before I show the results, what we're trying to do here is to close the first part, which is the username, and or 1 = 1. So anything or 1 = 1 is always true because 1 is always equal to 1. As a result of that, we are able to run the query as intended. Okay, so next is also to do the same for the password field. All right, so again, if we paste it, you click view account details, and when we scroll down, immediately, right, it pulls out all those information directly from the database. So you have your username, you have your password, signature, so you got all these usernames and passwords. Now we can use them to actually log into the web application server to run some attacks, right? Further attacks using other people's credentials and accounts, right? So that's exactly how the hackers could do it. So right here, we can toggle the security level, and I'm going to toggle this to security level 1, which is client-side security. So going back to OWASP 2017 A1, SQL injection extract data, click under user info SQL. All right, so we're back here again, and if I enter the following payload and I click view account details, immediately we get stopped by JavaScript, right? It states the following: dangerous characters detected. We can't allow this, much like padlocks. Filtering cannot be defeated. So as a result of this, whenever you have any of these special characters, it gets checked at the browser level on the JavaScript that has been downloaded into your browser. It checks the payload before it is given the opportunity to be sent into the web application server. So what we can do is go to the top right corner, all right, click onto the Preferences tab, all right, and scroll all the way down and click under Network Settings, okay? And click under Manual Proxy Configuration. So this will be the proxy, whether you're running Burp Suite or the OWASP, all right, or any of your own proxy that you want to intercept the payload before you send it over to the web application server. So in my case, I'm going to enter 127.0.0.1, followed by the port 8080. So click OK on this, open up Terminal, and what I can do is go ahead and enter Burp Suite, all right, and hit enter on this. So this will begin the Burp Suite Community Edition. So go ahead and select temporary project. Okay, click next. Use burp defaults. Start burp. All right, so we have here the proxy that has the intercept is on. So I can go back to Firefox, go back to the browser, and right here I'm going to enter name, for example, tasks, as well as the password tasks. Okay, and go ahead and click under View Account Details. So Burp Suite is now intercepting all connections from the browser to the web application server. So in this case, you can do a right click and send to repeater. Okay, and your repeater tab on Burp Suite will be blinking in orange, and you can see the following information, right? So we have the username as well as the password right here. Okay, so we have enter task as well as task. So what we can do next is to actually look back into the payload. So I have the payload right here that we need to send over into the web application server. So we can send it directly from Burp Suite. All right, so I can paste the information here, all right, to username as well as to the field password. Okay. And when you click send, you notice we get an error. All right, so it's 400 byte request because there are payloads of single quote, so it kind of messes up the URL information. So what we need to do instead is to go under the decoder, okay, the decoder tab, paste the information right here, okay, and we can look at the following. All right, so we can encode as URL, and we'll get the following information. So I can copy now that we have the URL encoding, copy the information, go back to repeater, and in this case, what we're going to do is to remove the previously used payload, and we'll replace it with the new payload from the URL encoding. So paste it. Likewise for your password field. All right, and go ahead and click send. So once you click send, you can scroll all the way down. So this is the part where we're able now to retrieve a proper response from the web application server. Okay, so right here, we have the results, and we have the following information: 23 records found, and we have the username, admin, we have the password, admin pass, we have all these different details right now of the username as well as the password that we can use to help log in and access into the web application server. So right here, we have security level 5 as part of SQL injection under user lookup. So over here, what we have done is you can actually go under preferences, and you can click under network settings, and you can set the manual proxy configuration. Click OK on that. All right, so what we need to do is to be able to intercept the traffic that is going to be sent over from the browser into the web application server. Click view account details. All right, and we have Burp Suite here. So I can go under proxy, and I can actually do a right click on this, and I can send to repeater. Okay, so under repeater, right, so we have all this information like the username, the password that we will be fuzzing. So you can do a right click and send it over into intruder. So you can see the intruder tab running over here, and we can look at the positions that we want to highlight on. So page, we can clear the information. We can reuse the same PHP session ID. All right, and we can have the user info PHP-submit button to be cleared as well. So we have two fields that we'll be testing our payloads on. And of course, if you click under payloads, we can load the payloads. So if you go under this particular folder, under USR, share, wordlist, on WFOSS, under injections. So we have SQL injection. So go in and enter on that. And it will list out all the payloads that we can utilize as part of the attack. So there can be a lot more kind of payloads that we can inject into the system. All right, so once you have all these details in place, all right, you can do a check on the options, and you can go ahead and click Start Attack. So once you click OK on this will begin sending all the payloads into the web application server. So in this case, we have multiple responses, all right, and of course, on level 5, what it does is that it is a server side, all right, server side check of validation. So as you send those payload in, the server side would actually be validating what kind of payloads you're sending into, all right, and ascertain that you are sending, all right, approved list of payloads, all right, depending on what kind of filtering technology they're using, what kind of ways they're utilizing to actually stop those potential malicious payloads. So I'm going to pause the intruder attack right here, okay, and I want to highlight what we can utilize, which is SQL Map, to help us run the attack. So SQL Map is another form of a SQL injection, or an automated SQL injection that can help us test all these different payloads against the web application server as well as the database so that we can ultimately retrieve those data and information. So I have the instruction right here. So I'm going to copy this whole list of command or instruction that we can send, open up a new terminal, okay, and I can paste the instruction here. Okay, so I can go ahead and enter SQL map. So I already have it. So we have the IP address, we have the link, all right, index.php and user-info, and then we have the username and password field, and go ahead and hit enter on this. All right, and right here, all right, it states the following: you have not yet declared cookies. All right, so we can use a new cookie, yes, and of course right here we can look at the results. So over here we have the following information. All right, it states the following: it is subjected to a time-based blind. Okay, so it is a blind SQL injection, meaning that when we send the payload into the system, we are not sure what kind of response is coming back. So what we can do in those blind-based attacks is that we can do a sleep and wait. Okay, so we can wait for the response to come back again, or wait for some of the instructions to go through. So if the web server is waiting for, say, 5 seconds, and 5 seconds later it then reloads the page, that will be an indicator that the SQL injection works for this particular type of payload. And in this case, we have the following payload. So we have the page, user info, and username. So we have single quote and select 9408 from select sleep 5. All right, and LTX. All right, and then followed by password field. So this helps us gain access into the system. And the second one that work is a union query. Okay, so union query right here. So username, union all select null, and then concatenate, and we have all the payloads right here. And again, right here allow us again the ability to actually access into the database, ultimately helping us retrieve all of the database names out of the database platform. All right, so once again, I hope you've learned something valuable in today's tutorial. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below, and I'll try my best to answer all of your questions. And remember, like, share, and subscribe to the channel so that you can be kept abreast of the latest cybersecurity tutorial. Thank you so much once again for watching. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode on How to Hack. So here we are on Mutilidade 2. Alright, so this is the Open Web Application Security Project, Mutilidade 2. So it helps us learn about web application vulnerabilities. So in today's tutorial, we're going to look at how we can actually pull out information from the database. So over here, we can go ahead and click under Login Register. Alright, and we can go ahead and click under Please Register here. And I want to highlight some really important points when we're trying to pull out information from a database. So not all the times are you able to for example, do a search where you can then do an injection of your payloads. So sometimes, right, a lot of web application servers or services, right, they allow us to create user accounts on the website. So in this case, we have the username field, which is usually static, right? So username don't change. And your password field, which is usually injected and only updated on the database end. So again, you may not be able to retrieve the password at all. So it's just a insert into, and it's just verifying at the back end. So you have no idea and you have no way of retrieving back the password. All right. But one really important way that you could utilize is to look at what kind of data is usually queried from the database back to the web application server and then being displayed for the user. So in this case, we have the signature field. All right, so the signature field is usually dynamic. So users are allowed to change the signature, which is an insert into query into the database. And at the same time, when the user views their profile, they will be able to do a select from signature so that they will then be able to retrieve those data. As a result of that, all right, the signature field is going to be a very important field for us to be able to get certain values, data of the database or information. Okay, so what we can do is the first thing is to try all sorts of payloads to see how and whether you're able to bypass the mechanisms that are used to protect the registration page. So it could be a web application firewall doing the filtering. It could be security mechanisms on the application server end. So we can go ahead and enter like single quote, double quote, hex, double slash, dash, and so on, right? So you try out all these different kind of payloads to bypass the database, or bypass the logic in order to gain access into the database. So go ahead and click create account. And of course, we have the error message here. All right, it states the following. Error number 1064, you have an error in your SQL syntax, okay, and so on. And of course, the best part is for your learning is that it even showcased to us what kind of query is being injected from the web application server into the database, right? So this is very helpful in helping us understand what kind of query is sent from the web application server and into the database, right? So over here it says insert into account. So they are inserting a new role, all right, with the following values into the following columns, which is the username column, the password column, and the my signature column. So all these are the columns names. All right, so what we can do next is to copy the query, okay, and paste it into, say, a notepad or a mousepad. So another thing I want to highlight is that majority of the time in the real world, when you're doing your bug bounty and your web application penetration testing, you're not going to get that kind of details in terms of error messages. What you're going to get instead is, chances are, just an error message, an error page, okay, and that's it. So then how can we further test that our payload is working? So you use one very common method, all right, which is to put the database to sleep, right? So you let the database sleep for, say, 5 seconds, all right? And when the response only comes back to you after 5 seconds, it means that your payload is working. You have access, all right? You managed to bypass the protection mechanisms, all right, meant to filter, to sanitize the input, okay? So what we can do next is we can go ahead and copy the following payload, and let me explain to you what all the payloads mean, all right? So we can go ahead and copy the payload into the username field. So we have the following X, and database. So we have X for the username, X for password, and database to be inserted into the signature field. So go ahead and click create account. And it states the following. Account created, one roles inserted, right? So go to OWASP 2017, A1 injection, SQLi extract data, click onto user info SQL. All right, so go ahead and enter the name as well as the password and click view account details. All right, so right here we can find out now the database name is Mutiladay. All right, so what else can we do next? Right, so going back to please register here, we can also do the following, right? So we can insert the following to get the version of the database. So go ahead and enter the following. All right, X for username, X for password, and version. Okay, and at the back, as you can see here, all right, we have a double dash followed by a space dash, right? So again, we can end the SQL query with, depending on what kind of database version are you running, it could be a semicolon, right? For example, here we got a double dash followed by a space dash. It could be a double slash, right, and so on. So all those are different ways for us to end the SQL query. So go ahead and click on the create account. All right, so in this case, we see the following. Account created, one row inserted. So go to OWASP 2017, A1 injection, SQLi extract data, click onto user info. So right here again, I can enter X, followed by X, and view account details. All right, so right here, we can see the following. We have the signature, all right, that actually reflects the version of the database, all right, or possibly, all right, the version of the operating system. So again, depending on what kind of database they're running, all right, that will allow us the ability to view those data through the queries. So once again, I hope you've learned something valuable in today's tutorial. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below, and I'll try my best to answer any of your questions. Remember, like, share, and subscribe to the channel so that you can be kept abreast of the latest cybersecurity tutorial. Thank you so much once again for watching.